2 children, a silent sliding door, and a forest that gave nothing back. In the spring of 2025, search helicopters cut through the skies over rural Pictou County, Nova Scotia. K-9 units scoured the dense underbrush. Maps of Gairloch Road lit up command posts, and the RCMP, with cameras rolling, delivered a puzzling statement. No evidence of abduction. The investigation is ongoing. Their names were Lily Sullivan, just 6 years old, and her 4-year-old brother Jack. Mi'kmaq children from the Pictou First Nation. On May 2, 2025, they vanished without a trace. They lived with their mother, Malihia Brooks Murray, and their stepfather, Daniel Martel, in an off-grid trailer on Gairloch Road. A rugged landscape of heavy woods, steep terrain, and winding waterways. That morning, Malihia and Daniel were in their bedroom with their newborn daughter, Meadow. Lily drifted in and out, her small footsteps padding across the floor. Jack was heard in the kitchen. Then silence. Moments later, the sliding glass door was believed to have been opened. By 10 a.m., a 911 call was placed. From the very beginning, the case hinged on one haunting question. Had the children simply wandered into the wild, or had something far darker happened? And as we'll uncover, this wasn't just a story about 2 missing children. It was about institutional transparency, about the hidden fractures inside a family, and about the growing weight of national scrutiny. This could have been anybody, it could have been your children too. But if you truly care about Jack and Lily Sullivan and want to see this case come to a favorable end, click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on the case as it unfolds. Like this video and share with friends and family. Who knows, you might be sending this to someone who holds a clue to finally solve this case. 6 children lived in the small off-grid home on Gairloch Road. On May 1st and 2nd, they were kept home from school, Lily with what her mother described as a mild cough. These were young, routine-driven children, and while some in the community would later speculate about possible diagnoses, the RCMP avoided any such labels. We will too. What matters is what happened next. On the morning of May 2nd, the parents were in their bedroom with their newborn daughter, Meadow. Lily moved in and out of the room. Jack's voice was heard in the kitchen. At some point, the sliding glass door is believed to have been opened. A pair of small boots gone. By 10 a.m., the children were reported missing to the RCMP, and a vulnerable persons advisory went out. The search that followed was massive. More than 100 trained volunteers, swelling to as many as 160, joined multiple agencies. Drones swept the treetops. K-9 units combed the ground. Thermal imaging cameras scanned the underbrush. Dive teams searched waterways. But by May 7th, the search was scaled back. Weather, terrain, and time all weighing heavily on the odds of survival. The RCMP's investigation, at least on paper, was exhaustive. 54 formal interviews. Polygraph testing for certain individuals. Hundreds of tips. The tally eventually reaching nearly 500. Hundreds of hours of surveillance footage reviewed. Multiple search warrants and legal authorizations. And yet, from the start, the message was careful. No evidence of abduction, but all scenarios on the table. On June 19th, the province of Nova Scotia added the case to its major Unsolved Crimes Rewards program. A reward of up to $150,000 was announced, one of the largest in provincial history. Through it all, the family remained in the public eye. Daniel Martel, the stepfather, made on-camera pleas for help. He claimed to have searched by ATV, to have given full cooperation to the RCMP, even to have taken and passed a polygraph. Yet the community whispered. Why hadn't an Amber Alert been issued? Why did the search scale back so quickly? Online speculation churned, but without proof, they were only theories. By summer, the case had shifted into a sharper, more uncomfortable light. Daniel Martel, stepfather to Lily and Jack, began referring to himself publicly as someone who had passed a polygraph. In one video, his tone carried a pointed edge, suggesting people could no longer point fingers at him. But that was his claim, not an RCMP conclusion. Officially, the Mounties had never cleared anyone. Online, the noise grew louder. Rumors surfaced, talk of a so-called confession, whispers that someone knew more than they were saying. None of it confirmed. The RCMP's official updates made no mention of these claims, But the gap between the public narrative and the police record was widening. On May 28th, nearly 4 weeks after the children vanished, the RCMP issued a new appeal for surveillance footage. They acknowledged they had already reviewed hours of video, but in rural Nova Scotia, there are long stretches with no cameras at all. Somewhere in those blind spots, the truth could be hiding. The day before their disappearance, the children had been seen in public with family, but the location was never made public. Daniel told CBC that police had pulled surveillance from the new Glasgow area. What, if anything, it showed remains unknown. In the community, a new story took hold. One of a fresh investigator, maybe from outside the immediate detachment, re-examining the case with new eyes. There were even claims of hidden recordings, the so-called Janie tapes, but no reputable source had verified their existence. These were whispers, not evidence, and yet they fed a persistent suspicion that something had been overlooked. From a behavioral standpoint, the dynamics inside the home were complex. Daniel had been in a stepfather role for over 3 years, a position that can carry its own pressures. Under intense media attention, his public appearances leaned heavily into cooperation, a pattern criminologists sometimes call pressure to present. The need to signal helpfulness, whether or not it changes investigative outcomes. Malihia, the children's mother, withdrew from public view entirely. For some, this looked like avoidance. For others, it was a clear sign of trauma. And above all, the investigation faced its own institutional challenges. The risk of tunnel vision versus the difficulty of pursuing every possible scenario. From the start, the RCMP had been careful to say they were considering all possibilities. But as weeks turned into months, the unspoken question grew harder to ignore.
As of August 14, 2025, the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan remains an open case. No charges have been filed. There is no trial. Officially, it is still classified as an unsolved disappearance. The RCMP insists the investigation is active, involving multiple units, multiple agencies, and an ongoing review of every tip, every video frame, every potential lead. They are still asking the public to come forward, and the reward, up to $150,000, remains in place. For the sake of narrative color, we present a few dramatized lines, clearly marked as such. A judge, this court reminds all parties, conjecture outside evidence is harm. Daniel, in a fictional affidavit, I surrendered devices, timelines, and statements. And Lilly and Jack's mother, I am afraid. But outside the dramatization, the questions persist. One theory says the children wandered and succumbed to the elements, a possibility supported by some of the RCMP's early language. Yet the massive, saturation-level search turned up nothing, no clothing, no remains, no trace. Another theory points to a stranger, or an opportunistic abduction. RCMP say there's no evidence to confirm that, but they have kept all scenarios on the table. Rural surveillance gaps make this hard to rule out. A third theory, the one most often whispered online, suggests someone known to the children was involved. But no charges have been laid, and the presumption of innocence applies. Polygraphs have been part of this investigation, but their results are limited in evidentiary weight. And then there's the institutional lens, debates over Amber Alert timing, the moment the search was scaled back, and what police mean when they call something suspicious. In Pictou County and the broader community, grief has been joined by mistrust. Calls for better alert systems continue. And the ethical obligation remains, to tell this story without naming uncharged individuals as perpetrators, to keep the focus where it belongs, on 2 missing children. If you know something, the RCMP tip line and Nova Scotia's rewards program remain open. Share only verified information. Avoid fueling the harm of rumor. For this investigation, our information draws from a combination of official statements, public records, and verified reporting. From the RCMP, the initial missing advisory issued May 2nd and 3rd, followed by regular search updates, a public appeal for video footage, and their later intensive approach briefing, which included the number of interviews conducted and tips received. From the Government of Nova Scotia, the standing notice on the Major Unsolved Crimes Rewards Program, offering up to $150,000 for information of investigative value. From Trusted Reporting, The Guardian's coverage of the search scaleback and its scope. People magazine's reporting on the size of the search and survival concerns in the terrain. CBC's coverage and YouTube explainer segments, which set the broader media context. From Polygraph coverage, a Newsweek report and policing trade sources, noting the RCMP's use of polygraph interviews in missing persons investigations. And from Daniel's own public statements, recorded interviews and segments in which he claims to have taken and passed a polygraph. These are presented strictly as his claim, not as a conclusion from the RCMP.